Welcome everyone to the Engineer Whisperer podcast. And this time I have Jason here. We're going to talk transitions into the director role. Welcome, Jason, to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So before we start, tell us a little bit about you.
So I grew up in Alaska, which is a little bit different. Spent a little time on the ocean doing whale watching and sightseeing and things like that as I put myself through college. I finished up my bachelor degree in communications broadcast journalism at BYU in Utah. At which point I stuck around Utah and realized that, as you can see, I have a face for radio, and um, made my way into software, working for a couple of tech companies, doing some tech support and teaching myself some technical skills, and really diving into that realm, and eventually moving into teaching myself how to do QA engineering, teaching myself how to do some development work, and eventually just being an individual contributor on teams up to that point, doing a little bit of everything along the way. That's kind of how I operate. It's the way I've always been. Is I like to take a little bit of this from everybody and put it all together and create great relationships and good things that way.
Well, let's see, how is that to be a leader of leaders and be a little bit of this, a little bit of that regarding leadership. So
Yeah.
let's jump right in. How was your transition into the director role? Were you invited, or was this then kind of always your plan? Let's start there.
That's a great question. So it was always my plan. As a young man, I participated a lot in youth activities, and I did a lot of leadership stuff as a youth. And so I always thought at some point that I would do some sort of leadership work. How that would go, I wasn't entirely sure. I didn't, nobody tells you, okay, you're going to make a career as a leader. They tell you things like you're going to be a manager, or maybe you'll be the boss or something like that. And what does that really mean? As a young kid planning out a career, you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and so I kind of went through the route, and I wanted to be the best at what I was doing. And so as I got into tech and got into testing, I wanted to be the best. And as I did that, I saw how it would impact and was impacting people around me as I was able to mentor and bring them up. And so I started mentoring early on, and I actually had an opportunity fairly early in my career to be a manager. It was a friend that invited me to go work with him, and come and be the manager of the QA department, and spent some time in that role, and kind of wanted more. I wanted an opportunity to, like you said, be a leader of leaders, and take a little bit bigger step. And I actually took my first director role shortly after that. But it wasn't your leader of leader type director roles. It was really you're a manager over a whole bunch more people is all that it was. There weren't other managers underneath me. It was just
So you just multiplied.
multiplied
The
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 number of people.
employees
Yep.
multiplied.
Yeah. Yeah. And that led to relationships with new people. And those people then gave me an opportunity actually to be where I am now, where I came on early with the company. It was the first employee that they hired as we started up basically a consulting firm for software development.
Hmm.
And as I've been in this, I've led um, efforts in QA. I've led efforts in development. I've done project management. All those things that you do to get your hands dirty and get things up and running and going to a point where you can then start bringing on more people. And as you bring more people on, then you have that need for management. And so then I kind of rolled into this as we grew and we had opportunities. We The founders of the company realized that they couldn't manage everybody, and so they needed other people to come in and be managers. So we started out kind of being managers, and I think I took on a role at that point where we had some, I don't know, 60, 70 people that were reporting to me directly, which we decided then shortly after that we needed more managers, and I had an opportunity then to mentor other managers. I wasn't listed as theirs. We've tried to keep a flat organization as much as we can. Um, but in that mentoring of new managers, that was an opportunity to lead leaders, and to help them grow in their path. And so a little bit of invitation, to come be a part of it, but also a little bit of kind of falling into it as we all kind of grew together, and tried to come
Hmm.
up with the best way to do things. And we're still in that, right? We're still trying to learn and grow and do things differently, and make sure that everybody has the opportunity for the growth that they're looking for.
I think these are the best when you kind of go with the flow. You're saying roll into it. I think these are the fun because it's you keep the motivation and the passion rolling with it and the inspiration rolling with it, versus burnout and
Yeah.
well, the other stuff. So that's good to hear. Well, let's hear more about your transition, even though you call it mentorship, but it's being the mentor of leaders. So in a way, you are acting as the leader of leaders. Let's start with what came easy. What's something that came easy for you in that?
The ability to establish a relationship, I think, was the easiest thing, because that was really the first thing. If you're going to mentor somebody, you have to be able to have a relationship with them. And that was easy. That part was really easy for me to do, even though these other leaders were a fully remote company, and so the others were in places like, Mexico and Costa Rica, and a couple, I think, in India. And so it was real easy to just mentor in that way and to gain those relationships.
Well, tell me a little bit more there, because maybe somebody's struggling with that. So what came easy in that? Give me go one level deeper.
So, to establish a relationship with somebody, you really have to take an interest in them. And I think to be, this concept of being a leader of a leader, you have to be interested in that person. You have to be interested in what their desires, what their growth is going to be. And so you learn to have conversations with them that are more than just the tactical, okay, what are you doing today with this team, with this group, with this engineer, or whatever the topic is. And you have to really say, what are you doing? How is your day? What are the things that you're working on? Get interested in what they're trying to learn.
So
Ask some questions.
so what I'm hearing is that you built it into your process of checking in, maybe those one-on-ones, those
Yeah.
connection calls, meetings.
Yeah, that's those are where it has to start. When you do remote, we have had opportunities to get together in person,
Hmm.
and so I've had the chance to meet some of them, directly and in person, and that creates a whole nother level of connection, with them, and I look forward to those opportunities, probably more than anything else. The time to get together and just talk. So.
Let me bring in something that a lot of engineers might think, oh, I'm not very good at kind of creating these relationships and open and others make I don't know, call it making others open up. So I have a sense that that comes easy to you. So how do you open somebody up, especially who's has a different background from a different culture, where maybe the obvious connection points are not that obvious?
Yeah, that's really the hardest part, is finding those, connections that maybe you already have in common.
Yes.
In my case, it was language. I do happen to speak Spanish fluently, so I was able to connect with them by sharing a little bit of my Spanish side, as we spoke, and found that made them able to relax, a little bit and share some more. And so that's something that I've relied on with the Latin America side of things. Outside of that, it's finding interests. It's asking the question, what do you like to do? What do you do in your free time? And typically you're going to find something there, especially among, the engineering realm. There's such a wide variety of interests. As we, talk to people, um, and establish connections with people in India, a big thing over there is cricket. And while I don't know a lot about cricket, sport has always been really important to me. And I've really enjoyed watching competitions and things like that. So I take that and I say, okay, well, tell me more about it. And I ask and I learn from them on what's important to them about cricket, and what do they like? Why does it draw them in? And then we can draw some parallels and do different things like that. So it's really asking questions. It's finding those interests, finding those things that they do outside of the coding, outside of the creating applications. You know, you talk to a lot of engineers and they say, "What do you do for fun?" "Oh, well, I just love to write code." Well, that's true, but not fully true, right? There's things you like to do besides just write code. And in
So then
finding
you
those,
ask again.
yeah,
So after you're done writing code, what else do you like to do?
exactly. What else do you do? And what movie have you seen recently? And maybe I have this background up, and sometimes that actually draws the
Mm.
connection because it's obviously Star Wars, and sometimes people are hesitant to ask, "Is that Star Wars?" Because they don't want to come across as, I don't know, geeky or nerdy or whatever it is. I'm like, yeah, absolutely it is. I love it. I've been able to get back into Star Wars as I've had a son get interested in it. I've gotten back into Legos and building because of those types of
Yes.
things. Those things
Mhm.
have all been good, and those extra things that I bring into my life allow me to also make connections. There's an engineer I worked with who was a big Lego fan, and so we just started talking about Legos, and I started sharing with him some of the things that I learned, and then I got to meet him in person, and it was a great chance to talk, and that's it's just finding those connections outside of what you do every day.
So also what I hear, Jason, that it's a lot of curiosity and a little bit of sharing vulnerability on your end, that
Absolutely.
maybe you share first by putting the picture up, by
Yeah.
gonna giving a piece of Lego, so then the other one can bring their own piece of Lego.
Yeah. Yeah,
Got
definitely.
it. Got it.
Yeah, curiosity is huge. That's a mantra we've tried to establish in our house. Be curious. Ask questions.
That's an awesome mindset to grow up with, and then to role model it as a leader, as a parent. I agree. It as they say, not just kids, I believe, but the saying is kids
Yeah.
don't do what you what you say, but they do what you do. So
Right. Right.
role modeling it. Well, thanks, Jason. Now, what about something that was challenging in this transition for you?
Um, Probably the biggest challenge was the sheer number of people initially, that I had to work with, before I actually had leaders of leaders, and was doing the mentoring before we hired new
Mhm.
managers. Finding a way to spread your time throughout an entire day of people across different time zones, from India to Latin America to here and here in the US is pretty similar, but you want to give everybody the time that they deserve, to get to know you, and to get to know them. And sometimes finding that time and balancing it with everything else
Mhm.
is really difficult because everybody wants a little piece of what you're doing. Your clients want some of your time. Other cross-functional teams want some of your time. Your engineers want some of your time. The company in general wants some of your time, and so you try to balance all of that, and it can be difficult. I'll look at my calendar some days and just go, I'm not going to have time to do anything but um, meetings
Mhm.
and talking to people. And while I love that, it also creates an issue where you have to be really good at following up. And I'm not the greatest note taker. I don't uh, I don't often collect my action items maybe as good as well as I should. Um, and so we end up um, asking afterwards sometimes, "Hey, what was that? What did we talk about last time?" And what were the things we needed to follow up on? And fortunately, AI is giving us a little bit of a leg up on that. It's helping me with some of my weaknesses in that realm. And
Okay. I was
um,
wondering what are the
yeah, yeah. So
processes, tools that you use.
yeah. So I have one of those note taker summary things that, it integrates with Zoom, and that helps me to keep a list of things that I need to follow up on and do. The challenge still continues to be finding the time to follow up on them.
Yes.
Because when you're in back to back to back to back meetings, you don't always have the time to do that.
So tell me more, because you have to make time in order to follow up, to sit down with people. So how how do you go about that?
So I block out time, where I'll list it as focus time. And I
Is that
turn
in
off.
the morning, in the afternoon, mid of the day, in the afternoon?
Depends. It really depends
Oh,
on the day.
okay.
Sometimes it'll be in the morning, sometimes it'll be in the afternoon. I learned about 2 years ago I had to block off time for myself around the lunch hour. Otherwise, I would miss lunch and then I'd be grumpy in the afternoon.
Mhm.
So as you can see, I don't miss a lot of lunches. We definitely eat plenty here, but um, that was an important thing. So I that's when I started to learn, okay, I need to block off time because I need time to do things, and I need time to follow up, and I need time to ask questions. Um, and so that's what I've learned to do. I don't always get a block of focus time every day. Some days literally are from 8:30 in the morning until 3:30, 4 in the afternoon, meetings with maybe a 30-minute block here and there where I don't have something. And in those times I need to get up and walk around and just kind of breathe
Mhm.
a little bit. So
Mhm.
um but a couple of times a week I'll get focus time in and be able to follow up on things. And the other part of it is being vulnerable with them, right? We talked a little bit about vulnerability, and I'll tell them at times. I'll tell that one of my weaknesses sometimes can be follow up, and that if they're not hearing from me when they expected to hear from me, to feel free to follow up and
So you're
things
giving them
about.
permission to
Mhm.
follow up.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
absolutely.
huge as a
If
leader.
if I'm not doing it, and yeah, you can let me know, so that I think that helps build the relationship a little bit, that vulnerability, and giving them that permission to bug me about it.
Well, and
And it
helps
just
you
helps me out.
too. I think that's
Yeah,
what I mean, literally that's what I'm hearing, that it,
yeah.
it helps you too. So, because often as an individual contributor, employee of a leader, or even a leader of a leader, our first thought is that we don't want to bother.
Hmm.
Oh, they must be busy. They're my, it's something like I don't want to be the cause of something, versus what you're saying is that, oh, but if you rephrase it, oh, I'm going to be the cause of him actually building his strengths, improving his weakness, like being on track and getting things done. Like that reframes it. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, I want to be that person, because you will welcome that. So it's the mindset shift of, oh, I am going to be the botherer versus, oh, I'm gonna bring value to my leader or my leader's leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on what the thing is we need to follow up on, I mean, it hopefully improves their life some as well.
Well,
Uh,
yes.
so
Yes, it's just moving out of that, oh, kind of blame, and
mhm.
then and others. Oh, hold on. This
Yeah,
popped
try
up.
to.
Take it away. Thank you. Oh, was there anything else that surprised you?
um I don't think so. I don't think that there were a lot of surprises. I think I had a good grasp of the things that were coming. Those were just, maybe the easiest and maybe some of the most difficult things to do. But we're always learning. So, yeah, that's, I think, where we are.
So my curious question is, what was then a mindset shift that you realize, you got awareness of, that you had to do and adapt, adopt, as you were going through this transition?
I think I've had probably the shift I've had to make is to learn to set boundaries. I tend to want to help everybody right in the moment that they come in, and some of that's from our culture of, the little red notification badge pops up, right? And oh, I've got to answer that. I've got to answer that. And for
Yes.
a long time, I couldn't let those go. And so I had to learn how to set boundaries with that so that, somebody's contacting me at, you know, 11 o'clock at night because it's the morning where they are.
Hmm.
I had to learn to set boundaries and say, I'm not answering that. We'll look at it in the morning, because otherwise, my time didn't become um it became a 24/7 job, and that's not healthy. So I had to find a different way to do that.
So, Jason, I'm curious, how long did it take you to, well, to get that awareness that, oh, my work and my days are 24 and boundaries are needed? Just curious, what was the learning curve?
I think I recognized it within a few months, but I don't know that I knew what to do. It was probably another couple of years before I was able to teach myself to settle in and allow for things to pass, and to not have to answer something right away. And the steps to get there really came from learning patience with myself, um, learning patience with others, and realizing too that, and this was maybe the biggest realization that helped me get it past, is that when I send somebody a message that's outside of their normal working hours, I don't expect an answer. And and I realized that if I don't expect them to answer, they probably don't expect me to answer right away either. And I think as I came to that realization, it was easier to set the boundaries and not have to respond to everything right away.
Now, was somebody who helped you along the way to realize it? Because you said, we're talking about years. Um, or
Um,
was it just you alone? Because I know I'm asking the vulnerability question here, and feel free
that's
to
okay.
answer or not answer. It's just I'm thinking others might be in the same situation right now. And
Um, the the person that helped really was my wife. It wasn't a peer at work. It wasn't a coworker. It wasn't a mentor. It was my wife, and she helped talk through it because she saw, the stress and the anxiety that it was causing me, right? And then that comes
yeah.
out a little bit at home as well. And so we talked through it a lot. Um, we talked about those things, and if there's times when I get a message, if I get it, it comes in after hours and I see it, she'll say, set your boundaries, and just get those reminders, from her. And so it's really her, I think, more than anybody else.
Hmm. That's what I call partnership.
Yeah,
Really
for sure.
having somebody on your side, because as you said, they anchor us and they remind us of what the promises that we made to ourselves. Because
Right.
really, you made a promise to yourself before you made a promise to her. Uh, that would ultimately will benefit her too. I mean, I can see that too. I'm a wife too. So,
I hope so.
uh, but it's the promises that we make to ourselves. The promises that I make to myself, I call it, it's so much easier to keep when I have somebody who reminds me of them. And that's what I hear. Well, thank you very much for answering. And, let's give some recognition to your wife. So, kudos to her and you guys' partnership.
She's the greatest.
As
So
they say, behind a great leader, there's always a great partnership. So,
for sure. For
another
sure.
example of that. Well, as we're closing, Jason, is there any transition that you're going through right now that you want to tell us about?
Um, well, the industry in general is struggling. Our clients need less of us, and so we've had to do some things differently that we didn't want to do. We're doing some planning, and I look at my own career path and realize that at some point there is another step that I need to take. And maybe it's, executive level type leadership to where I really truly am just leading leaders, and not kind of doing this hybrid of leaders and direct management. And so that's kind of the transition that I'm in right now. Not that I'm actively transitioning, but I'm looking at those options and looking at what I need to learn and do in order to make that transition down the road.
Mm. Yes, I often say that we first start in our mind the transition
Mhm.
and prepare there before we take actions. And then, because change happens very fast, but the transition is a longer period
Right.
that starts in our mind.
That makes
Well,
sense.
well, thank you very much. And let me give you the last word. Is there something that you want to close us out with?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think being a leader, anyone who's taking that on is taking on a responsibility for other people, and understanding that people are in all different phases of life. And when you can understand that and have that empathy and that emotional intelligence that comes with it, um, you're going to find connection a lot easier. You're going to find growth better. And truly, you'll find, I think, less burnout, and you'll find more opportunities to do the things that you love to do.
Well, thank you. Yes, empathy is a big one, bringing that and compassion. Well, on that note, Jason, thank you very much for joining me today and thanks for sharing more about your transition.
Thanks for having me.